All right, guys, the Utah Jazz have quietly had one of the stronger off seasons of any team in the league. Let's talk a little bit about it, and is it good enough to make them a contender for the championship? It's the Hoops Nerd Show. All right, guys, before we get started, if you haven't already, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. I appreciate it. It supports everything I do. Just hit the button right now before we get started. Do it. It's right there. All right, guys. So the Utah Jazz have done some moves that maybe everyone expected, but whether they were expected or not, they were impressive. The first one we have to talk about is the re-signing of Mike Conley. I know that everyone, all the national writers and bloggers and all these guys talked about how it was expected that Mike Conley would come out, or would re-sign with the Utah Jazz. But you can't just look at that as like a ho-hum thing. That was a big deal. If you remember when the Jazz lost in the second round to the Clippers, the whole team was disappointed. Every Jazz fan, every front office guy, the coaches, the players, everyone expected the Jazz to go farther than they did. It was a disappointing ending. And the thing that was probably the most interesting about it were the comments by Mike Conley after it ended. If you didn't remember, Mike Conley after it, in his post-game presser after the Jazz lost, did not make any sort of inclination he was going to re-sign with the Jazz. And it was something that, made every Jazz fan nervous. I'm sure the front office people were a little surprised by it, where he just said, people asked him if he was going to resign, what was going to happen. And he basically just said, I'm going to weigh my options. Not something you want to hear if you're the Jazz. You'd love to hear Mike Conley say, I'd love to come back. We'll see he didn't say that at all. He said, I'm going to weigh my options, talk to my family, all these things, and figure it out. And so this was not a for sure thing to get Mike Conley back. And when you look at the market, there was a market for Mike Conley. You had the Knicks that had open cap space that would have been willing to give him a lot of money. You had the Dallas Mavericks who opened up a ton of space, and there were rumors out there that they were going after him. Rumors mean something happened. And so I'm sure the Dallas Mavericks were going hard after Mike Conley and were trying to sell him on playing with Luka and things like that. The Pelicans opened up cap space and were looking for a guard. So there was a market out there for Mike Conley. If he wanted to go, there were opportunities to get just as much money as he did with the Jazz. The thing that's nice for Utah is that they got a nice contract for Mike Conley. Conley signed for $72.5 million over 3 years, which is lower than what Kyle Lowry got. Lower than what Chris Paul got. That is a really nice contract for the Jazz. Probably his injury history and missing the Clippers series for the most part with his hamstring injury probably played into that a little bit. But the thing that's interesting about Mike Conley is Kyle Lowry's like 35. Jimmy Butler just got a massive contract. He's like 35 years old. Chris Paul is 34, 35 years old. Mike Conley's 32. This is actually a great contract for the Jazz. And the fact that Mike Conley has had 2 years under his belt playing under Quinn Snyder, he has learned how to play with Donovan Mitchell, where he lets Donovan Mitchell be the primary scorer and playmaker, and Mike Conley plays off of Donovan Mitchell being that secondary guy. And he's played so well that he became an all-star last season. It's a perfect fit with the Jazz. It's his best opportunity to go to the finals if he wanted to. It's a home run for Mike Conley. It's a home run for the Jazz. $72.5 million is probably less than some Jazz fans even expected. I think some fans thought it might be even more to make sure he stays, which is a good sign because it means that Mike Conley wanted to stay. Obviously he wanted to get paid, and if the Jazz were stingy with their money, he might have gone elsewhere. So you've got to give credit to Ryan Smith for being willing to make that payment, but you've also just got to be happy as a Jazz fan to know that Mike Conley wanted to be here. That's a big signing, and anyone who tells you that's just whatever, don't listen to those people, because this was a big deal for the Jazz. They re-signed the All-Star. This idea that people don't want to stay in Utah is not true anymore. Salt Lake City's never going to be Miami or LA or New York, but the players that do come here enjoy playing here and are willing to re-sign. So it's a great sign for the Jazz that they sign him. The second thing that happened for the Jazz that was probably the low mark for this offseason was Derrick Favors having to be traded and giving away a first round pick to make it happen. That really was, that just sucks. Anytime that you make a mistake in the past and you have to make up for it with a first round pick, that's no fun. And so I believe you let me know in the comments. I can't remember exactly. I believe it's next year's first round pick that the Jazz traded. And it's just, there's no way around it. It's bad. But by making that trade, it allowed them to open up some cap space. So when you sign Mike Conley, the cap bill for the Jazz is not just going to be, it's not going to be astronomical. The Jazz go from having one of the, maybe the worst cap situation in the NBA to like sixth worst. So still not good, still bad, but at least not as bad as that guy, I guess, right? The other thing is you had to move Derrick Favors because he was just not playing well. He just wasn't. The Jazz could not play him in the Clippers series for most of this season. Derrick Favors was dealing with some sort of ailment, and making the money that he was, like 10, 11 million or whatever it was, is just way too much for a backup center that was just hurting. And every Jazz fan loves Derrick Favors. Every Jazz fan appreciates everything that Derrick Favors has done for the Jazz. He'll always be a Jazz man. He'll always be someone that fans look at fondly. Great memories with Derrick Favors. I'll never forget the series with the Clippers where Rudy Gobert went down. Like the first play of the game, Derrick Favors comes in and plays his heart out and helps the Jazz win that series and helped, give time to Rudy Gobert to come back so the Jazz could try to advance further. Derrick Favors was an absolute warrior. The sad thing is that they had to trade him. He was just chronically injured. He's got the back and the knee stuff that just doesn't look like it's ever going to be better. The Jazz had to do it. Whether it was now or later, you could argue maybe they should have waited to the trade deadline and things like that. But what this did, it just opened up a roster spot, helps their cap situation. It just helps them work and move from now on, and moving forward, they don't have to have that contract on their books anymore. And so farewell to Derrick Favors. It's a sucky thing they had to do. It's basically making up for a mistake they made last season, which was a terrible offseason. But this offseason has been much better, and I like that the Jazz made the right decision to improve. All right, guys, let's switch gears a little bit. It's time to talk about Manscaped. It's the space read. Attention, listeners across the galaxy, all the way from Australia to Houston. Do we have a pube problem? If so, our friends at Manscaped have cleared you for takeoff with their 4th generation and brand new Lawnmower 4.0. I have it. I use it. It's amazing. Go get one. And you know how you go get one? Kick your with your code HoopsNerd20. I'm just going off the rails with this read. Kick your pubes to the next planet with the performance package. The orbit in your pants will feel like you're in zero gravity when you use the best tools for the job from the leaders in male grooming. The things they have me say. Join the 2 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped and get your rocket ready for takeoff by going to manscaped.com for 20% off plus free shipping with code HoopsNerd20. Guys, it'll save you like $20-30. It's way worth it. Get 20% off plus free shipping with the code HoopsNerd20 at manscaped.com. That's 20% off plus free shipping with code HoopsNerd20, HoopsNerd20, for a clean trinity and beyond. Your space balls will thank you. I read it, Manscaped. All right. I read it. Okay, let's talk about a few other moves that the Jazz did that I was really impressed with. The one that just made me so excited was this guy right here. The Utah Jazz come into this draft with a bad cap situation. They have the number 30 pick. Because the Jazz had the best record in the NBA last season, they come in with the number 30 pick. So their reward for getting knocked out of the second round is the worst pick in the first round, literally last. So I came into this draft just kind of feeling like, any player that I really wanted is going to be picked 5 picks at least before the Jazz do. And Jared Butler was someone, and we did it in our SLC Dunk mock draft. You can go to slcdunk.com and read it. But there was just no way in our minds, and in basically every national blogger's mock draft, that Jared Butler was falling past 25. Most of the mock drafts had him like 22 and lower. There were some that even had him in like at 9 or 10 or something like that. There were some scouts that even liked him better than Davion Mitchell. So this guy is just a lottery caliber player. And with a draft like this one, which was so deep, he fell kind of out of the lottery in most people's mock drafts, but no one expected him to fall to 30. The Jazz trade from 30 to 40 and he falls to 40. It was just so incredible, and just maybe it's a stroke of luck. Maybe it's Justin Zanuck having a little bit of intel and knowing maybe he would be there. I heard a story by Radio Spot with Chad Ford that said the Jazz were they had traded that number 30 pick because they did not expect Butler to be there. And then when he fell, they were sick to their stomachs because they wanted to get him. And then he falls to 40. Whatever it was, good fortune, good intel. The Jazz hit a home run with Jared Butler. I know there's the heart condition situation, and I'm not even quite sure what it is. If anyone knows, let me know in the comments. But he's a lottery caliber talent. You know, in a draft that was probably not as deep as this one, he might have been a top 10 pick. But this draft was so deep, he like fell back, and because of the heart condition, other teams got squeamish. He falls to the Jazz. I'm personally so excited to see Jared Butler. And the thing I'm excited is because he's such a perfect fit for what Utah does. He can shoot the ball. He can handle. He can drive. He is a defender that defends hard. And he fits perfectly with either Mike Conley or Donovan Mitchell. So whether it's Mike Conley with the ball or Donovan Mitchell with the ball and Jared Butler's in, he can play off of them. And he's just a 40% plus three-point shooter that's going to come in and just hit shots for the Jazz right away. It's going to be really great. The Jazz are going to just be a lethal offense next year. And, you know, he can handle the ball, and Mike Conley and Donovan Mitchell can play off of him. So he's always going to have shooters to kick out to. Oh, and by the way, you've got Rudy Gobert that you can play with that will dunk everything you lob to him in the air. You know, and if he can get inside passes to Rudy Gobert and Gobert can take advantage and dunk the ball, that's fantastic. So Jared Butler, absolutely a home run pick for the Jazz to get 2 second-round picks out of that Jazz and still get Jared Butler, who, according to Tony Jones, was the guy they wanted the whole time. Home run. Absolute home run. A+ signing for them. It's not the grade for the Jazz yet. We'll give that to at the end. Anyways, Jared Butler was fantastic. The other signings that we saw that we had talked about a little bit in my last video, Rudy Gay and Hassan Whiteside. To me, those were just solid pickups. Rudy Gay, according to Tony Jones, was the guy they wanted the whole time. He's someone we've heard rumors about for a long time, so I'm sure that the insiders have been talking with the Jazz front office about who they wanted to get. Rudy Gay comes to the Utah Jazz on a 2-year deal worth, I believe, about $12 million. And it's kind of a steal. Basically, the Jazz let Georges Niang go. He goes and signs with the Philadelphia 76ers. Rudy Gay will fill in that spot for Georges Niang. It's a solid pickup. So if you go from Georges Niang to Rudy Gay and you look at the defensive numbers for Rudy Gay, and they're surprisingly good, like top 15 in like defensive real plus minus and stuff like that, it's pretty fantastic. You have a guy that also played multiple, like large amounts of minutes. I think like 250 minutes last season as backup center for the San Antonio Spurs. He can come in and defend. He can come in and play backup center and spread the floor and give the Jazz a lineup that allows them to defend at a good level in the playoffs while also not sacrificing spacing. If you have Rudy Gay on the perimeter and you have players like Jordan Clarkson, Donovan Mitchell, Mike Conley, and those types of guys driving to the rim, that's fantastic. That allows those guys to score even more at the rim and at a more efficient level. The Jazz can give other teams a taste of their own medicine for what they do to the Utah Jazz. So, you know, the Jazz with just that signing become that much more versatile. It's a really perfect pickup. It actually reminds me of the Joe Johnson signing for the Jazz like 3-4 years ago. And we saw how that worked out with Joe Johnson hitting game winners in the playoffs. So Rudy Gay is like Joe Johnson 2.0 for the Jazz. 38% from three, 42% from the field, defends at a high level. He's very switchable. It'll allow the Jazz to do some things they weren't able to do last year. It's just a home run. And I'm sure he'll play more in the playoffs than he will in the regular season. I'm sure during the regular season, the Jazz are going to try to keep him not playing too many minutes, you know, so he's ready for the playoffs. But come playoff time, he may be getting nice, you know, bigger minutes to help on the defensive end and switch and with multiple lineups. It's great. The Jazz also get Hassan Whiteside, which was nice. I'm guessing that was the Dwayne Wade connection. I believe Dwayne Wade played with Hassan Whiteside actually 3 years while he was in Miami. That's kind of a crazy connection. Hassan Whiteside can come in as backup center security because the Jazz now have 2 backup center prospects, Udoka Azubuike and Hassan Whiteside, to fill in the role that Derrick Favors did. It's interesting that those 2 guys, Hassan Whiteside signing a minimum deal and Udoka Azubuike on a 1-year rookie scale or on a rookie sales contract, not a 1 year. Those 2 guys get paid less than just having Derrick Favors on the team. And Udoka Azubuike in Summer League has looked fantastic. The Jazz have themselves a nice little 2-man competition between those 2 guys to prove who should be backup center. And I wouldn't be surprised if Udoka wins the spot. But either way, Hassan Whiteside comes in and will put up numbers. He's he just puts up numbers. I don't care what you think about him. I know he's not as good defensively as everyone thinks. He does get blocked shots. He's one of those players that blocks a lot of shots, but might not actually be a good defender, if that makes sense. You know, sometimes hunting for block shots isn't always the best move on defense if it opens up other guys and allows an easy shot. And so that's always going to be something with Hassan Whiteside to give or take. But because the Jazz have Udoka developing and looking like a really nice backup option as well, they have choices, and that's great. And plus, they aren't like beholden to a huge contract. So it's fantastic. Just a really nice signing for the Utah Jazz. Hassan Whiteside really completes their offseason, puts a nice bow on it. And now, what's the grade for the Utah Jazz? What do we grade the Utah Jazz this season? I'm giving the Jazz an A-. All right. And the only reason they'd be getting a full A if they didn't have to make up for Derrick Favors. Really, that's the only reason. Otherwise, it'd be A, maybe even an A+, because every signing they've made has helped them out. I don't know if the Jazz are as versatile as they want to be. I know that they signed Eric Paschall, and that makes Donovan Mitchell happy. And I actually don't think we should, not give that much clout, but I do think that makes Donovan Mitchell happy. And if you keep Donovan Mitchell happy and he re-signs, it's worth a second-round pick every day of the week to have Donovan Mitchell re-sign when he becomes an unrestricted free agent in like 3 years. So Eric Paschall could also develop into something nice. That was another solid pickup for the Jazz. I thought something more was going to happen, but Paschall is nice, and he's also kind of a Rudy Gay type player that's played some backup center and can switch. So we'll see. Maybe Rudy Gay can mentor Paschall and, help him get to another level as a player. He did improve his three-point percentage, and his defensive numbers looked pretty solid. So if he can come in and play nicely for the Jazz, that's phenomenal. All right, guys. So I'm giving him an A-. I think it was a fantastic offseason. The only negative thing was having to make a move to make up for the mistake of the Derrick Favors contract. But other than that, everything was great. You would have liked to see them maybe make another bigger splash if you could. But with the cap situation as it was, you weren't going to get anything through free agency because you literally can't. And you didn't probably want to trade any of your core guys without the unknown of getting worse. So the Utah Jazz get an A-. Fantastic stuff. All right, before we go, I want to give a shout out to our All-Stars. Let's start with Kelsey Hamer, the Hammer, Anton Antoine Warren, Ezekiel Rice-Sibe, the man from down under, JT Buckets Wardell, Austin R. Grant, editor extraordinaire, Eric C., the C stands for champion, Donald Schooley, schooling all of us, Super Mitt Robach, DW to CB, Darren Williams to Carlos Boozer, Jorge Arrizaga, mi amigo de bajo, Lee Christensen, driving the lane, Ryan Perry, the legend, Justin Ty H, Patrick Akubo, the connoisseur, Robert Hall of Fame Hall, and DW Jazz going all the way. Make sure you guys like and subscribe, join the channel to support it and be a part of what we're doing here. It's great. The regular season is filled with live streams. We did live stream during draft, during free agency. I actually don't think I did a live stream during free agency, but the draft one was a lot of fun. Guys, like and subscribe, support the channel. I will talk to you next time.